There was this issue that was raised by Sorens of a household in reference to a billing issue. Have you resolved that now? Even though I had formally escalated the matter for them to deal with procedurally. There are time frames. You can't leave issues hanging forever. The city gets overtaken by events because a lot happens on a day-to-day basis. Same in this instance. The purpose of this was for me to get feedback from the general in terms of what's happening. We can't just ignore this thing. I'm not breaching any processes. I'm dealing with the general, who is part and parcel of the process. So what I would have expected from here was the clarity that he sends, I think on 177, where he then sends the, no, not 170, 178, where he then gives that feedback. That was the purpose of that. So I was still following our own procedures and protocols, and it's normal for me to get feedback on the process towards resolving matter from our colleagues.
I accept that at 178 he gives you feedback, and I'm happy you say that. But this feedback that he gives you at 178, it's clear from it that it's not followed the process that you have described to us. And yet you don't say to him in response, you don't say to him, follow the process. In fact, you accept when he says, I've directed them to you, which is where they started. You say, you're right, that's the process. And that's a part that I don't understand, and in fact that I'm putting to you, seems to be inconsistent with your own process that you have described. And I'm battling to understand or to see that you are not involved in a way that undermines the very process that you've described needs to be followed.
So at this point, Commissioner, I can only deal with the colleagues that we have. And once they raise this, I need to accept that as the status quo, meaning the onus is now on the service provider to take the matter forward. Meaning I'm not breaching our processes because I'm not actively intervening. I was requesting for feedback, and that's normal in terms of resolving matters. Once colleagues who are within the city give me feedback, I accept that. And then the onus is on the service provider to take the matter on.
Yes, but you see, Dlamini says, I've told the service provider to go back to 482. That's a problem I have, that right now you say that the onus is on the service provider, and I accept that. They must submit the necessary documents. But here's what's happening internally. General Dlamini, you have said he must go and meet with them, right, in those WhatsApp exchanges where Sergeant Nkosi forwards to you where General Dlamini says, I need to know whether to meet with Goobies. You say, let him go meet them. He gives feedback. He says, I have met with them, and in my meeting with them, I've redirected them to the CFO. I've said they must meet with the CFO because that's where they started. You respond and you say, this is the way, much appreciated. So on your own handling of this matter, you don't say to Dlamini, tell the service provider to do our internal process, which is submit to you APPS, then it must go to SCM, and then it will come to me. You don't do that. You say to him, I agree with you that you have redirected them to me, which is where they started. I don't know what you're saying, the service provider, if indeed this was about payment, what you're saying the service provider must do now, because they started with you. And Dlamini tells them, go back to the CFO, and you say to Dlamini, I agree. And yet you're explaining to us now that, but the process is different and they were not following the process. I'm completely confused about your explanation if this was about payment.
Okay. Commissioner, this was about payment, firstly. Secondly, once I receive such communication, it means the matter has been fully ventilated. And I don't expect anything further. There's nothing further I can do except for wait for any form of communication that I will refer accordingly. When I say, thanks, this is the way, I'm sufficient and I'm happy with the explanation that I'm receiving from the Deputy Chief Dlamini. Meaning from his end, he has done what he can do. There's nothing else that he can do. Meaning if these guys want to take it further, they just need to refer the matter to me. He, at his stage at TMPD, is most likely saying, I've evaluated this matter. I don't see any probable case for payment. You can escalate this matter if you want. I then respond and say, okay, that's the way. Let's see what they have. Let them escalate and let them submit POE now.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
So the purpose of this meeting, as I understand it, was to deal with the Goobies payment issue.
Yes.
And the critical player there would be General Dlamini or Deputy Chief Dlamini.
TMPD.
TMPD, yes.
Yes.
But he didn't come to the meeting.
He was not available.
So why did you and Sergeant Nkosi meet anyway?
We socialize all the time. We had a meal after that. It was a long day. We probably had lunch.
When did the general tell you that he wasn't going to come?
He didn't tell me, he told Sergeant Nkosi.
And you just met anyway?
No, we just met anyway and we had a meal.
Let's look at what I'm going to call him the general because that's how he's referred to in the papers. Let's look at what the general does later that evening. Can we go to page 176? Same bundle. So at 176, the last text on the page is a screenshot that Sergeant Nkosi sends you at 8:31 p.m. And it's a screenshot that on its face comes from a message that the general sent to him at 8:02 that day. And it's a table that has tender number TMPD1, and then it's got a list of 7 companies on it. And at the bottom it says, Captain, nai mandate u Victor apiwe yona from US. And helpfully underneath it, the Sergeant Nkosi has said, companies given to Victor by Nico. So, number of questions. We've established that US is the general. Mm-hmm. So this comes from the general. And the message says, Captain, this is the mandate that Victor received. Victor was given to Victor. Is that correct?
In terms of this message, yes, that's correct, Jesse.
Sorry?
You saying what must I confirm?
Look at the foot of that message.
Yes.
Captain, nai mandate u Victor apiwe yona.
Yes.
This is a mandate given
Yes.
to Victor.
Yes.
A mandate.
Yes.
In other words, something that Victor must act on.
This looks like it, yes, Jesse.
Yes, and we see below that the mandate was given by someone called Nico.
Yes.
So let's identify the players. Who is Victor?
Victor is a chairperson of this evaluation committee.
Victor Gopa.
Yes, that's him.
He is the chairperson of the BEC, and he's been given a mandate.
Of BEC, yes.
Yes. 7 companies.
Yes.
How did you understand this message?
I ignored this message.
No, that wasn't my question. How did you understand it?
I read the message. It said, Captain, nai mandate u Victor apiwe yona. That's how I understood it.
So Victor has been given a mandate
Yes.
in relation to 7 companies and this tender.
Yes.
How I understand it is Victor has been given a mandate to make sure that these 7 companies get the tender.
Yes.
Is that how you understood it?
Well, Chair, I'm not going to comment on what that is because I can assure you now, I didn't even entertain this thing.
No,
Because
I accept that you didn't entertain it, but I want to understand, I want to know how you understood it.
This could have meant a number of things. It could have meant Victor must make sure companies are awarded, which he can't because he sits with committee of individuals. Secondly, it could have meant that Victor must check compliance. So it's difficult for me to give you an answer, Chair. I did not entertain this message from my perspective.
Sorry, Mr. MNISI. The question is about how you
Yes.
understood it. It's not about several possibilities. How did you understand it? That's the question.
Yes, Commissioner. And my answer is I understood it within those probabilities, that it could mean a number of things. I didn't know what it meant, but it could mean those 2 probabilities. But I can't come to the Commission and expressly say, I understood this have meant that.
So as you read it,
I had options in my mind that this is
as
what...
you read it, you
Yes.
understood it possibly to mean one of those
Yes.
possibilities.
Yes.
Who is Nico?
I don't know who's Nico.
Sergeant Nkosi confirmed that Nico was Nico Matobela. Do you
Okay.
know Nico Matobela?
No, I don't know Nico.
You've never had any dealings with Nico Matobela?
I've never met him. I don't know him. I've
Is-
never had any dealings with him, SC.
Was there anyone called Nico Matobela who had any role to play in the award of this tender? Official role?
No, I'm not aware of any official by the name of Nico Matuela.
And you've said in relation to the message that you understood it to be capable of two meanings. One, Victor had been given a mandate to appoint these 7, and 2, Victor had been given a mandate to check compliance on these 7.
Yes.
Would either of those mandates given to Victor be lawful?
No, he can't. There's no way he could check compliance. Firstly, tender is closed. He could only, by law, give clarification on the outcomes of the bid. So that's no from a compliance perspective. Secondly, it's also no. He's not allowed to get names from external individuals to appoint.
Did you raise this with Victor?
No, Chair, I didn't raise it with him.
Why not?
Because my job was to ensure that I strengthen the process and ensure that there's no glitch within the award of TMPD 01. For me, this was a matter that I need to look out for and ensure that the process is even stringent.
Well, here you have the chair of the BEC, who you are being told has been given a mandate either to appoint 7 companies or to check compliance with 7 companies at a stage when it would not have been lawful to do so. Did you not think that it was appropriate to raise with Mr. Khopa whether this report of his mandate was true?
You see, firstly, Chair, me raising this with him would now have an element of me trying to find out what's going on within the BEC. Once I'm aware of such information, my role is to strengthen that process, and amongst others is to ensure that probity assessments that are done are completed accordingly and that all information that is assessed, validated, is true and correct. It does give me a warning to be vigilant and to ensure that we strengthen this process, which is exactly what was done by referring the matter to probity for further assessments.
So although on its face, the message suggested at least a real possibility that Victor had been given a mandate to rig this tender, you didn't see fit to take this further in any city processes?
No, I did see to take it further, and me taking it further was insisting on probity to occur without fail.
But probity would have occurred come what may. This tender was above 20 million. You didn't have to play any role there.
No, Chair, remember, not all matters, even if it's after 20 million, are automatically taken by probity team. Me was to emphasize there are reprioritizations that occur all the time. So it was essential for me to ensure that that probity assessment is not deviated at all costs.
But probity would not have picked up external attempts to interfere in the process. For example, and this is from your explanation of probity, of the probity process. Probity would not have picked up, for example, that Mr. Modise has been approached to do something, the WhatsApp that we looked at. Probity would not pick up that that Sergeant Nkosi asked you to confirm compliance, and later on you suspect, in fact, he wanted you to influence the tender. Probity would not have picked up this mandate to Victor. So the answer can't be that, well, I insisted on probity and so all was covered. If the question is, what did you do? You are the CFO with some responsibility, yes, together with the city manager for your procurement processes, the integrity of your procurement processes. And when you are asked, you become aware that there are these attempts, including people being given mandates, allegations that people have been given mandates. If you ask the question, why did you not do did you do anything about it? The answer can't lie in probity, because probity looks, you said to us, I think on Friday, probity looks at all the tender documents, all the documents that were submitted, and then they make a determination whether the process was fair. So the answer must be something else, can't be probity.
Chair, that's the relevant answer. You know why I'm saying that? Because it would be in a position to check whether all compliance, administrative, mandatory, and all stages of procurement are followed to the T. Matters of this nature, from my perspective at this stage, I just need to be vigilant and be wary of them. So the process of probity is essential because it validates whether there's been any breach within the steps. Also, what's key, Chair, is that within the segregation of duties, before documents are transferred from point A to point B. They're always under lock and safe, and there's always individuals who are there signing off on handing over documents. So what would occur within that process would be something that would express for probity to ensure that this portfolio of evidence on what happened within that process.
Could probity have picked up that Sergeant Nkosi tried to influence you to do something about his brother's tender? Is that something that probity, outside of the tender documents that were submitted, just from your communication with Sergeant Nkosi, could the probity process have picked it up?
The answer is no to that.
Yes.
But can I please explain?
You can.
Probity would have picked up whether there was an actual tamper of those documents, whether there was actual influence. They would not have picked up an attempt. An attempt, it's not easy for them to pick up. But an actual tamper, it's easy for them to pick up. They utilize a number of specialized audit tools in assessing documents, how they are compiled, whether there's been exchange of documents. That's the process that they follow.
Yes. And the question was, and if it wasn't Mr. Chaskalson's question, then it's my question. It is, you become aware because you are directly approached to assist a tender, right? A particular tender or bidder. You become aware that your deputy mayor has been approached to assist. And for that matter, he says in a meeting, he says, I was in a meeting, so it's parties that are represented in the municipality that he says, I had a meeting with, and this is what they said. You become aware of that. You become aware that General Dlamini is involved with distributing lists of companies that are supposed to be favored, whether at the BEC level. You become aware that the chairperson of the BEC has been given mandates, at least that allegation. My question is, CFO, why do you do nothing about it? Not probity. Don't say to me, I know probity will pick it up. I'm asking you, CFO, because you and the city manager do have responsibility for the integrity of your procurement processes, the SCM, the whole process. You have responsibility for and accountability for it. Do you do anything about those attempts at external influence, influence? And if you don't, what is the reason for that?
Okay. So at this stage,
And I want to add the involvement of Sergeant Nkosi as well. You have a complete outsider who is involved in this, who has a personal relationship with you. You do absolutely nothing to discourage his involvement in affecting the tender or the procurement processes of the city. Can you just explain that?
so at this point, Chair, for me to raise anything further, I need to have evidence of gratification, inducement, or an acceptance by other party. That indeed you do this for me, I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the sufficient appropriate evidence that I need to have at my disposal before I can even escalate a matter for further engagement. Because at that point in time, I would have had evidence that there is interest, and there's always interest in these matters. I would also have evidence that there's been an agreement, and there's a form of gratification and inducement that has been advanced by any other parties. So without that, at this point in time, my role is to strengthen the processes and to ensure that everything is followed to the T, and that probity is aware of ensuring that all matters of the stages of procurement are adhered to. So the reason I don't do that, there's no evidence of inducement, nor is there any evidence of gratification. It would render my case a case of strengthen your controls. Even if I were to raise that, it would be, you need to ensure that the processes are stringent and strengthened at this stage in time. We don't have sufficient evidence to really take the matter forward.
Thank you.
Chair, we've reached 1:05. I have a long way to go on this topic.
Let's adjourn and come back at 2:05.
I couldn't even advise on that.
And to be fair to you, you asked to explain, so explain and then go back to Mr. Chaskalson.
So what I was explaining, Chair, is that that's what they were asking me to do. And that's what made me link the two to the first discussion. The first discussion was on 148, please assist with checking compliance. If they keep on sending a list of 7 companies, it's in relation to that. Hence, you can see this persistence, Chair, and you can see why I wouldn't waste my time doing this. And
But Mr. MNISI, you can see why it couldn't have been a reminder. So your evidence this morning that they were reminding me cannot be correct, because if it's a different list, then you're not being reminded to check compliance of the previous list, because it's a completely different list.
I respectfully disagree with that, Commissioner. The request was to check compliance, whatever they were sending me. If you look at 148 as explained, right, I ignored that. I didn't even say anything. It was preceded by a phone call. That phone call is what expedited on what I was requested to do. If you look at the second instance on 152, that second instance, they just sent me 2, and it's after a phone call. The phone call this time comes first. There's a request while we're speaking, did you check that? No, I did not check. I don't even remember what you sent me. They then sent that to me again, which is why, from my perspective, that's a reminder. On 157, similar thing happens. And then on 177, exactly the same thing happens. There's no way where I trigger that, firstly, and I respectfully disagree with that point of view, Commissioner.
Okay.
Now, you've just spent, these messages come from, in a period around about, from 8:30 p.m. on the 25th of March. You've spent the evening of the 25th of March in what should have been a meeting with Sergeant Nkosi and General Dlamini, but turned into just a night out with Sergeant Nkosi, remember?
It was not a night out. It was probably just lunch for like 45 minutes, not a night out.
Just 45 minutes. And it started roundabouts, I think the last, about 4:15 is when Sergeant Nkosi arrived. So you just spent 45 minutes together, yes. And you went your separate ways around about 5 o'clock. But you did spend 45 minutes together.
Yes. And
before that, on the same day, before you've spent that 45 minutes together, Sergeant Nkosi has sent you 2 names, Ngapeshea and El Shaddai, early in the day. And now afterwards, he sends you 7 names saying, this is the mandate given to Victor by Nico. You don't know who Nico is?
No, I don't know who Nico is.
But these are 7 strange names.
Uh-huh.
And then he answers, he follows that up saying, here are another 7 names. Find below our vehicles for land to be given Kuimfuetu in order of priority. You see that?
In order of priority?
In order of priority, yes.
Yes, I see that.
You say, thanks, Mfowethu, I'm on top of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, this is ours, Mfowethu. Yes. This is the final list, right? Mm-hmm. So now is this huffing and puffing? You're playing along with him?
Yes.
I see. And it's just a pure coincidence that the top 2 on that list just happened to be awarded the contract a few months later.
It's not a coincidence, SC.
It's not a coincidence.
They were compliant. The documents that were submitted, that were evaluated, that were probity checked, deemed these companies as compliant.
No, well, there are many issues before you get to the award of a tender. Compliance is one of them. In due course, we'll show that they weren't remotely compliant. The second is whether they were the best bids. But of course, if you're not compliant, you shouldn't get your foot in the door at all. You accept that. There is a third issue, which is if there is an appearance of bias in the process in favor of a particular company, they should not be awarded a contract. In fact, the whole process should be nullified. Are you aware of that?
So there's no bias that's reflected here, Chair? I'm sorry.
Sorry, you say there's no bias here?
There's no bias at all.
I'm talking about the appearance of bias.
The appearance of bias is in the event that physical exchange of documents and there's physical proof to prove that. And once there's sufficient evidence, we can rely on that to take the matter forward.
Well, I mean, I don't want to enter into a legal debate with you, but I want to put some facts to you. By this stage, we have a series of texts which show that a complete outsider, acting with the deputy head of the client department, is repeatedly asking you to give preference to the bids of two companies, El Shaddai and Ngapashare. You accept that? 4 separate occasions.
I accept that with an explanation that it was for me to check compliance.
But earlier on, you recognized that by this stage, the 4th stage, you had started to realize that what they were actually asking for you to do was to interfere with the proper processes of the tender in favor of those companies.
Indeed, I mean, I've seen this and I see the persistence and I can read in between the lines. Unfortunately, at this stage, I still don't have sufficient evidence to confront anyone in reference to that. But from my perspective, in my own understanding, it was clear. I mean, you can't persist so much, being rejected, being explained to, but you still persist on the same matter. It's either you're ignorant or you're playing me for a fool, which was, of course, the second aspect. Hence, I had to decide to play along and to ensure that I deal with this matter once and for all. And with also all due respect, you will take note that after this, and my purported playing along and entertaining, or rather huffing and puffing, it stops. Not ever again do I receive any communications of this nature.
Well, that's not entirely true, but let's look at the sequence. Let's go to page 444. And there, you'll see that on the 13th of April, General Dlamini sends 2 messages to Sergeant Nkosi. The first one says, lease agreement for both company and director for rates and taxes. Interpretation of PI Act. 3 years financials must be done by independent auditor and signed or certification that they've been audited. Lease agreement of vehicles. The document submitted of Avis is a quotation and we need an agreement with photos of vehicles including a 5-ton truck. Public liability insurance for 10 million. And immediately underneath, afternoon, Captain, I trust you're well and your family. Please push Becky to submit the above documents. These look like documents that would be mandatory requirements for compliance with that tender TMPD1. Is that not correct?
But we're sitting on the 13th of April.
Yes.
Tenders have been submitted and closed on the 2nd of October, SC. These documents are under lock and key.
Are you seriously, you've been through these documents, have you not?
So my question is, why would we infer that this chat here is in reference to that? Maybe firstly, I've never received this. This was never ever forwarded to me. You are now, with respect, SC, showing me a conversation between Sergeant Nkosi and the Deputy Chief Dlamini. And you're pointing out areas of deficiency. This is clear areas of deficiency. I can see that. I'm just requesting for you to please show me the alignment between TMPD1 and on this.
Well, was a lease agreement for both company and director for rates and taxes a mandatory requirement for TMPD1?
Well, with your permission, I want to go to my annexures where I look at the mandatory requirements so that give you a certain answer.
You can just say yes or no if you know the answer. If you want to go to the if you need to go to the annexures, by all means go there. But if you know the answer, let's hear it.
With your permission, please, SC, may I please go to my document so I can verify that?
Sure do.
So I'm on my bundle, and I'm on annexure GM13. I'm going to start with page 162, and I presume this is stage 1, and it should be part of administrative requirements. So A is in reference to a tax compliance. B is in reference to CSD documentation. C is in reference to confirmation that the bidder's company rates and taxes are up to date. Original municipal bidder, statement for the bidder, not older than 3 months, and account must not be in arrears. Letter of statement and affidavit from landlord, or that the bidder has no disputed account and that the account is not in arrears. So based on this, there is a company document that's required or a letter in the form of an affidavit. So I can confirm that as a requirement. So here, we're saying a lease agreement for both company or director. What I'm seeing on page 163 of my bundle, GM13, page number, item number C, it does request for a confirmation of the bidder's company documents for rates and taxes, 1, or a letter from the landlord confirming that.
So are you saying that item 1 in this chat on page 444 was not a mandatory requirement?
So what I'm saying, SC, is that on page 44, item 1 says, lease agreement for both company and director for rates and taxes. The actual documentation on GM13 says or. You need to submit the companies, doesn't say both. Further.
Under the MFMA, is it permissible to award a contract to a bidder whose directors are not up to date with their rates of taxes? Do you know the answer to that?
The terms of reference and the specifications as discussed in the bid specification committee is key.
So you're saying this is not, there are no overriding requirements in the MFMA?
The statement of return, the statement that must be submitted, whether for the company or for the director as per the specifications, must not be in arrears.
So if the directors are in arrears but the company isn't, you can still consider the tender?
In the event that the terms of reference as per the specifications are clear, that we want either or. So if whatever has been submitted...
I'm asking you a separate question. I'm asking you about a legal requirement that is higher than anything your specifications can say. Does the MFMA contain such a provision? Are you aware of that?
The MFMA contains a provision that the rates and taxes that are submitted must not be in arrears.
For companies and directors?
Or.
You say or?
Yes.
Continue.
Well, I'll go to the second one. I think the first one, remember what I'm trying to do is to see an alignment or a linkage between 444 as well as the terms of reference. So from item number 1, I don't see that alignment because it says this requirement is for both. The terms of reference says 1. So that already from my perspective doesn't align to TMPD 1. Item number 2.
Before you go to item number 2, unless we are reading different documents, at 163, your page 163, item C, from the top, it says confirmation that the bidding company's rates and taxes are up to date.
Yes.
And then D, in addition to the above, confirmation that all bidding company owners' rates and taxes are up to date. Am I missing something in your discussion with Mr. Chaskasan?
Yes, so we are getting to D. Remember, I just touched on C. I'm getting to D now because we want to move on down the ladder.
You're not saying it's either or. I'm reading this to say my reading of this suggests that you require both to be compliant.
If we look at both C and D, yes.
Okay.
Do we have to look at both C and D, or can we choose which of these requirements we're going to honor and which ones we're not?
No, we have to look at both C and D. These are mandatory requirements.
So that first requirement is tallies with the tender?
Yes.
Let's
By
look
virtue
at the
of both
second.
C and D, SC, yes.
Interpretation of PI Act.
Interpretation of PI Act.
What's this tender about?
The tender TMPD 1.
Yes.
Illegal land invasion and illegal occupation of the city's buildings.
And what is the primary legislation governing that process?
Chair, there's TMPD competency, and that's why they're involved in governing, in complying with specifications. I can't answer that.
Do you know what PI Act stands for?
No.
Prevention of Illegal Evictions Act.
Okay.
Would you accept that that is the single most important piece of legislation governing the subject matter of this tender?
Amongst the rest, this is a key requirement.
Not amongst the rest, the single most important.
I see, with all due respect, all the requirements are equally important. Anyone that's not there results into disqualification. So it is equally important as all other mandatory administrative
I'm
compliance
talking
matters.
about legislation governing the subject matter of this tender, not qualifications to enter the bidding process. Legislation governing the subject matter of this tender.
So the specialists will be able to answer that, and the specialists will be individuals from human settlements as well as TMPD.
So you can't comment on that.
I don't know.
Or what is your response to 2 in terms of the requirements of the tender?
2, on the administrative requirements, I don't see that there. I'm going to stage 2 now. On stage 2, on 164, we start on 165. And I can see on item number 4, there is a reference that bidders must submit a complete copy of the Prevention of Illegal Eviction of an Unlawful Occupation Act. I agree to that.
How about 3?
I'm just jumping in between the 2. 3 references, 3 years financials must be done by independent auditor and signed or certification that they have been audited. So I'll presume that this must have been part of the administrative requirements. I'm going to go back up to 1 first, and then I'll see if they are there in B. So we've covered A in terms of the tax compliance certificate. B was the CSD. C and D made reference to the companies' rates and taxes, as well as the individuals' rates and taxes. E makes reference to ensuring completion of all bidding documents 1, 4, 5, 8, and 9. And then part of E is the failure to declare interest will be disqualified. Financial statements for the most recent 3 years or financial statements from date of existence for companies less than 3 years. The bidder must submit the signed, audited annual financial statements for the most recent 3 years, established for a shorter period, submit audited annual financial statements from the date of establishment. If a bidder is not required by law to prepare signed financial statements for auditing purposes, then the bidder must submit proof that the bidder is not required by law to prepare audited financial statements. So what I can confirm from what we're seeing here is that audited financial statements needed to be submitted. But the element of having an independent auditor sign them off for certification, I don't see that.
Sorry,
but I can agree that.
Sorry, maybe we're missing each other. What are audited financial statements if they're not signed off by an independent auditor?
Audited financial statements are financial statements that are audited. So,
and does the auditor not have to be independent?
Yes. So what I'm looking at here is the elements which cover that, and I'm saying it is there, Chair, as part of, I think, the second, third line item from the bottom, where it said, if it's established for a short period, submit audited annual financial statements from the date. So it is audited financial statements that are required. I'm not disputing that. I was just explaining.
Let's go to the next item.
Next one is lease agreement for vehicles. Document submitted of Avis is a quotation, and we need agreement with photos of vehicles, including 5-ton truck. That must have been within the mandatory requirements, and I think that's covered on item 5, where it says lease vehicle, signed lease agreement by either director or company along with the title holder for certification. And the next one on the public liability insurance for 10 years, for 10 million, apologies, It's captured for under 7, 166.
So we've now established that all of these were mandatory requirements.
These are mandatory requirements as per GM 13, yes.
And General Dlamini is saying, afternoon, Captain, I trust you are well and your family. Please push Becky to submit the above documents. So what it looks like is that some 6 months after the tender has closed and documents are supposed to be under lock and key, General Dlamini and Sergeant Nkosi are trying to make arrangements to cure 5 different mandatory disqualification features of the Nkapeshea bid.
That's what it looks like, but however, this doesn't also preclude this from being a bid in anywhere else. Why I'm saying that is because this is the 13th of April. There's no way documents could be amended from my point of view. I have outlined how the process operates, so I'm still struggling to see why this could purely relate to that, to TMPD1 from my perspective.
We'll get there. I want to take you to some other sort of strange features of this. Let's look at the top of page 455. This is
455.
455. This is Sergeant Nkosi on the same day. General, I spoke to Becky now. He tells me he's spoken to Nico. You didn't know who Nico was, but...
Excuse me, SC, I'm not following. My 455...
445, sorry. Sorry.
Okay, 445, yes, I see that.
And you remember, you didn't know who Nico was, but Sergeant Nkosi identified him as Nico Matobela.
Yes, SC, I don't know him.
And you said Nico Matobela had no legitimate role to play in this contract.
No, he's not an employee of the city as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Sergeant Nkosi writes to General Dlamini, I spoke to Becky now. He tells me he's spoken to Nico when he was busy with the documents of El Shaddai. No? El Shaddai is one of the 2 companies that Sergeant Nkosi has repeatedly been sending your way. And with hindsight, we believe he was asking you to interfere in the process in favor of El Shaddai. Nico promised to help out. Now he's no longer answering his phone. Please check, Nico. I will push Becky. These people must know it's not one thing. They must work as a team, not the other way. Please, General, intervene. We can't lose now. We've been waiting for this for a while. What does that look like to you?
So this looks obviously like they are assessing documentation, or they are preparing a bid document, or they are analyzing what the requirements are of a specific bid that they are dealing with, and they need to ensure that those companies' details or mandatory or administrative requirements are compliant. That's what it looks like to me.
And you don't see any link between that and TMPD1, the tender TMPD1?
See, TMPD1 had closed on the 2nd of October. The process that I've outlined and how I know the city operates, there's no way this could have related to that. So at this stage in time, this could be individuals working on bids from I don't know where. So I'm still at this point in time unable to conclusively say it's for TMPD1. What I can confirm is that it looks like individuals are working together on a submission. But it can't be a submission for the city of Tshwane because you can't be starting a whole bid from scratch. This looks like people analyzing, assessing, auditing documents that they have and preparing a bid. That's what it looks like to me.
Let's go to your chats now. Let's go to page 228. This is now the 24th of April.
Yes.
At message time 12:39, actual time 2:39 p.m., you send to Sergeant Nkosi a message saying, Nkapeshea is grade B and has nothing in the documents.
Yes.
Mfowethu, please send to US and request him to provide him with information for the correction. We need grade A guards.
Yes.
Yes, so you did send those messages?
Yes, these are my messages and I did send them.
Yes, what were you doing?
So at this point in time, Sergeant Nkosi had sent me a document for another institution where they were preparing a bid. This was a bid that they were busy preparing. I looked at the published tender document that was there, spotted the key requirements. Key requirements of that tender document was grade A, nothing to do with grade B. So I was saying, because I knew that the general would assist him on preparing bids in some way or form, they need to take it up with him so they can work on that together. This, I can assure you, was not in relation to TMPD1 whatsoever.
So your version is that the General, yourself, and Sergeant Nkosi were freelancing on the side for a tender for another government institution. Is that the version?
Not freelancing, providing bid clarification on the tender that they'd been working on.
Sorry,
There's no-
providing what?
Well, he had asked me to look at the clarification on the document that was there. I'm not freelancing because I'm not expecting any payment. I don't want any payment. I'm purely providing advice on something that they're interested in, SC.
So you are offering free tender advice to Sergeant Nkosi, and you're suggesting that he gets the assistance of General Dlamini, another employee of the city, to get more free advice on his tendering processes.
Of course,
That's correct.
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Where do we see this other document or whatever was sent to you to advise on? Because you must have been working off something to saying Ngapesheya is grade B and has nothing in the documents.
Yes.
To say we need a grade A guide,
Yes.
and then ask him to provide information for correction.
Yes.
You were working from what
I had
to be
seen-
able to make
yes.
those observations?
Yes, Commissioner, I'd seen the actual tender document for that institution.
So how did you receive it? Was it given to you in hard copy? Was it sent on email? Was it sent on WhatsApp?
No, it was
Because so far, everything that you have about this transaction, it is on WhatsApp.
Yes.
How did you get
No, this
this
one,
other
he
document?
gave me a copy of it. The actual,
Who
the
gave
raw
you?
tender document, Sergeant Nkosi.
To assist who? Who was the bidder that you were assisting?
Ngapesheya, that's his brother.
Okay.
And the requirements of that was grade A. They didn't have grade A, so they were never going to qualify for that bid.
Yes.
Because they had grade B.
No, I am answered. You were assisting Ngapesheya. You had Ngapesheya's documents in front of
No,
you.
no, I
when
didn't
you
have
made
that.
these
Sorry,
observations.
I'm so sorry, Commissioner. I don't want to interject. Apologies. But I just want to I didn't have Ngapesheya's documents. I had a raw tender document that wasn't completed. I did not have Ngapesheya's documents. I had known that this requires grade A. They don't have grade A cards.
Yes, but you say in the message, you say Ngapesheya is grade B and has nothing in the documents. So you had Ngapesheya's documents.
Maybe just
The
to,
question is, which documents? You can't walk back this message. This message, clearly, you had Ngapesheya's documents. That's why you're able to say there's nothing in the documents.
with all due respect, I was referring to the tender document. I had a document. It was a raw tender document.
Why do you know that Ngapesheya has nothing in the documents if you're looking at a raw, what you call a raw, unnamed, it doesn't have anyone's name?
Yes.
If that's the document you have in your hands,
Yes.
how do you know that Ngapesheya is B and there is nothing in the documents?
So my point of reference and what I meant with this message, as you can even see, the sentence structure and the construction is not so good. However, Ngapesheya is grade B. There's nothing in the documents about grade B.
Oh, you're not saying that. You're saying, and has nothing in the documents. Ngapesheya has nothing in the documents. That's the only sensible way of reading this message. It has nothing to do with construction or misunderstanding. When you read this and you read it sensibly, you're saying Ngapesheya is grade B and has nothing in the documents. So you are working off Ngapesheya's documents.
Honorable Commissioner, I think I'm just going to clarify that again because I know the document I was working on, and it was the tender document. I say here, Ngapesheya is grade B, and there's nothing in the documents. So I meant that there's nothing in the document about grade B, because this particular tender required grade A, did not require grade B.
Okay.
Maybe it's how I wrote it at that point in time, but the interpretation and what I meant when I sent that, regardless of how quick I was and my inability to correct the sentence structure at that stage, but that's what I meant.
And when you say we need grade A guards, if you are not participating in this tender, who is the we? Why are you speaking as a party participating in a tender?
Yeah.
If you are not a party to it?
Unfortunate, Chair, Commissioner, this is how we would normally refer to each other. There are many instances in the chat where I say ours, which should have been him, where he say ours, where it should have been me. So it was a way that we would speak. And there are many inferences that I can also show you in this, where I say can, we, whereas it meant you. It was just a way that we adopted of speaking. It was an informal conversation.
So you say all that you had was the raw documentation when the tender was issued and not Ngapeshea's documents.
Yes, Chairperson, that's what I'm saying.
Yes. Of course, I'm aware that you say that the language here that is in the text that Commissioner Baloyi has just referred to needs some refinement. But as it stands, it says, and has nothing in the documents. So that obviously refers back to Ngapeshea. So if Ngapeshea has nothing in the documents, that could not possibly be reference to the raw documentation you have referred to.
Commissioner, it is in reference to grade B. Ngapeshea is grade B. There's nothing in the documents about grade B. That was the intention and that was the understanding when I wrote this message.
Yeah, but it has nothing, it may well have been about grade B, but looking at the documents, it has nothing on what is required. And it can only be because you've gone through its documents that you are able to pronounce on what it has or does not have in the documents. That can only be in Ngapeshea's documents, not the raw documents. Otherwise, this is totally senseless.
Commissioner, with due respect, this was in reference to the tender document and the key requirements from the mandatory perspective. Within that, the requirement...
What could it possibly have had then from the raw data? Because it could either have had or not to have had documents based on what it had submitted. So you could only make that pronouncement based on what it had submitted. You say it has nothing in the documents.
So nothing.
You could not pronounce on that based on the raw data because the raw data has nothing to do with the specifics that is Ngapeshea's documents.
Yes, Chair. But I can pronounce on the key requirements is by the raw document. I was already aware.
That cannot assist you. Looking at the raw data without comparing with what Ngapeshea has or does not have, the raw data cannot assist you. So to keep referring to the raw data does not, cannot assist you.
Chair, I respectfully disagree with that notion. Those were the sequence of events. I looked at
those were the what?
That is what was happening, the sequence of events. I had the raw document. It required grade A. Ngapeshea is grade B. They had nothing in the documents about grade B. Unfortunately, in this stage...
And I'm sure if I ask you, let me know, and how had you established that Ngapeshea was grade B? I know what the answer is going to be, but let me hear it.
I was informed, Chair.
I knew that was going to be the answer. But what is sensible to me is that you actually had Ngapeshea's documents. You saw from the raw data what was required, which was grade A. And you looked at Ngapeshea's documents, you saw that it was grade B. That is why you are able to refer to the documents, which in context could only have been Ngapeshea's documents, but I will leave it at that.
Please look at 535 quickly. Same file 4.
Excuse me?
535.
Page 535.
Yes.
I'm on page 535, Commissioner.
Are you there?
Yes.
So these are Ngapeshea's documents. And the SIRA grading, you see the recognized training qualification as of date of issue, grade B.
Yes.
That's the only place you could have picked that up. Because somebody telling you that Ngapesha is grade B would have required that you verify it. You couldn't positively say, I know that Ngapesha is grade B. What is required is something else. You must have seen this document on 535 for you to be able to positively state that Ngapesha is grade B.
Commissioner, I did not see that document, firstly. Secondly, I was aware that it's grade B because I was informed. And thirdly, my job was to advise on the tender, on the raw tender document, whether is it grade A or B. They are grade B, there's no way they were going to qualify for that specific bid. And further to that, Commissioner, this has nothing to do with TMPD1 completely.
And it must be a coincidence then that this document also features in the chats and you didn't see it. It must be a coincidence that it finds its way into chat 357.
So, Commissioner, this was never sent to me, by the way. So I don't have these chats. I think SC Chaskelson was clear. These were chats between Sergeant Nkosi and DC Dlamini. I don't have that.
But it must be a coincidence that it features in the chats around the same time that the discussion about Ngapesha's grading is taking place.
Commissioner, like I said, I've not seen those documents. They were never ever sent to me. Even the first set that the SC Chaskelson was referring to. I've never seen them. I'm only responding now because the Commission is posing questions to me.
And you remember what the tender documents were for which municipality?
I don't remember,
But
unfortunately.
they were delivered to you. You said you received the hard copy.
I had seen a hard copy, yes.
Thank you.
Let me show you why the answer you are giving is not correct when you say you had only the raw document. At that page 228, the WhatsApp message that we were looking at, it could not have been a raw by raw, you mean the standard tender document which is not completed, because in that same message, in the message after Ngapesha is grade B, the very next message from you says, please send to US and request him to provide him with information for correction, right? So you're seeking a correction. You are sitting with a document which is completed in a way that you have determined or you've been told doesn't meet the requirements. Otherwise, a blank document doesn't require correction. If indeed you were working with a blank document or your standard tender document that was issued, there would be nothing for Ngapesha to correct. You would simply have said, tell him he needs to submit a grade A certificate, but you're speaking about correction. So that is consistent with you were looking at a completed tender document of Ngapesha and you picked up errors or shortcomings about it, which is that it is indicated grade B, and you're saying Dlamini must advise him to correct this, which you have seen. So it is not correct and it's not truthful for you to say the reference to documents where you say nothing in the documents speak to a blank standard tender document. What I'm putting to you is you were sitting with a Ngapesha document. That is why you are advising Nkosi to tell Dlamini to tell Ngapesha or Begi to make a correction. That's the only sensible construction of this series of WhatsApp messages, not what you're telling us. And the sensible construction is you were working off Ngapesha's documents.
May I respond, Commissioner?
Yes, you may.
So respectfully, I disagree with that inference. Why I'm telling you that is these are my chats, and I understood what I was going to and what I was saying in reference to this. There's no assumption that I'm making in terms of this. Fortunate part is that these were informal, and there was no formality in the manner in which we were having these discussions. I did confirm to you as a commission that I had a raw document from that institution. I picked up one shortcoming. I stopped looking at the rest because I saw we're never going to make this if there's a shortcoming of this nature. If you want to get this matter resolved, please speak to GS. Maybe he can advise you further on how to get this corrected. That was the notion around this discussion. It was not in relation to any tender document for the city of Tshwane. It was not in relation to TMPT1, and I did not have a completed set of documents for the entity Ngapeshe.
Had your answer?
Was it not a conflict of interest anyway for you to be, at the same time, around the same time, to be assisting Ngapeshe with a tender, even if, according to you, there was a totally different tender and for another municipality? When Ngapeshe was competing for an award within your municipality, in a process where you were going to be one of the adjudicators as the chairperson of the bid adjudication committee, was that not a conflict of interest?
No, it was not, Chair. It had no relationship with the city of Tshwane at all. Further to that, why I'm saying no, I'm just trying to expand on that, Commissioner Kumalo, is that it had nothing to do with the city of Tshwane, firstly. Secondly, I did not look at I did not look at any attachments and conducted a physical assessment of what was there. I just looked at the raw document and provided advice on a key area, which is not done. You just forget about that. So there was no conflict of interest, firstly, because of those two reasons. Secondly, as a result of this tender that was already open, it hadn't closed at that point in time, and I was just giving friendly advice in a similar way where I would get informal legal advice from an attorney. It does not necessarily mean, who is a friend of mine for argument's sake, does not necessarily mean that that is something that I must pay that individual for, firstly, or that is something that I'm binded to. It's simple advice. So it was no harm from my perspective because I was not involved in this tender. It had nothing to do with my employment. I only interacted with raw documentation as well.
For a chief financial officer, that's a very narrow view of a conflict of interest. You, by agreeing to assist, have come to have a relationship with this entity, not just a relationship, but a relationship in terms of which you assist that entity with the preparation of its bid. By preparation, I don't necessarily mean starting from the beginning, but at the point at which that bid was, you were requested to assist to make sure that that bid document was what it ought to be or to have been. And that same entity is participating as a competitor in a bid process which you are going to chair, at the stage of deciding with a view to a recommendation to the municipal manager to recommend whether to award or not to award. It's at the tail end of the process. You basically adjudicate. And you say there is no conflict of interest? In my view, that's a very, very narrow view of what a conflict of interest is.
Chairperson, if I may respond, I think firstly, there's no association between this and the city of Tshwane. That immediately absolved me of any conflict of interest. Besides, I've got no interest, whether financial or of any other sort, whether they receive or they are appointed within that area where I'm assisting in review, in looking at the raw documentation and what the requirements are. I've got no interest in that. I stand not to benefit. I have not been promised any monies. I have not been promised any funds. It's just merely a friend who specializes in these matters to have a look at what's key as per those documents. That's the context roughly on this. Secondly, providing advice when bids are open, it's the nature of my job. It forms part and parcel of that. I try to demonstrate as well that when I made a presentation on GM2 and GM3, even if this was a tender within the city of Tshwane, within the applicable open period, I am allowed to say, this is what you need. To clarify in general terms, this is a matter that was further escalated to the city's war room as a result of items of this nature serving as a red tape, if I might put it as such, where individuals were being disqualified for petty issues which which could have easily been avoided had they understood the contents of the requirements of any bids. As long as it's within a particular open period, firstly. Secondly, as long as I don't interact and I provide general advice, which is what I did in this aspect, Chair.
This is different. Oh, sorry. This is totally different. This is your friend's brother's company.
Yes.
You assist that company for a bid, which, as you say, was for some other entity, whatever the entity was. So it's something that you have a close or intimate relationship with. You have said you are close friends with Sergeant Nkosi. So this is his brother's company. Based on what you are telling us, you did not even see a need to make a disclosure when the bids were being adjudicated and you were chairing that process. I'm sure, based on how you are responding to me now, you did not even see a need for a disclosure. In fact, I will suggest to you that you basically do not know what a conflict of interest is if you can have as narrow a view as you have, or as you have explained. Now, can you respond in particular to the fact that this is not just any entity, it's an entity belonging to your close friend's brother. You assist with the preparation of a bid. Is that not likely to give the perception, if this were to be known, is it not something that will give the perception that surely he's going to favor this company, even in the bid that he is adjudicating now? It's on that basis that I say that your view of a conflict of interest is very, very narrow. And I do not understand that coming from a chief financial officer. Please respond.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I see where you're coming from, but I must, with due respect, disagree with you. On the basis, firstly, that within the city of Tshwane, there's segregation of duties in terms of the appointment process, and there's no way whatsoever that I can do, Chair, to influence that process. Nothing at all. I demonstrated how that process worked, Chairperson.
There's nothing you can what?
There's nothing I can do to influence, and I have not influenced.
Conflict of interest is not necessarily about the reality of you actually doing something. It also concerns perceptions. Are you saying, as you are sitting there, that you are not aware of that? That conflict of interest only relates to what you may actually have done.
Chair,
Yes.
you gave me a loaded question. I need to respond to all aspects of that. I'm not ignoring everything else that you have raised.
Yes,
I
yes.
will touch on them. But I
Yes.
needed to touch on the most important factors first.
Yes.
And those most important factors, firstly, is I did not influence the process within the appointment of TMPD. I could not influence that process. My virtue at BAC was purely to provide oversight to ensure all compliance matters were adhered to, not to influence, to play an oversight on that.
You see, my question is not about whether, as a matter of fact, you influence the process. That's not where I am. And you heard me and you heard the lengthy explanation I gave, and you have not addressed that. You choose to address whether you actually influence the process. That's not my question. Can you please answer my question now?
Apologies, Chairperson, I'm getting there. Your load question was extremely
Oh, no,
loaded.
you went quiet, I
No,
thought.
no, I was
Oh,
still
I'm
speaking.
sorry.
I was
Okay,
stopped
okay.
while
Please continue, please continue.
Secondly, Chair, me providing general advice on a bid that's outside the city without any expectation of inducement, payment, or anything of that nature, it can't say I've got a conflict of interest because I'm not interested in that. It's a general way of providing advice. Like I'm also saying, had it been at the city as well, if the prescription process was still open, it's normal to do that. And it's acceptable on a general terms. Secondly, in terms of the conflict of interest, I've got no interest in his brother's company. He's my friend. So, Chairperson, by virtue of people being friends with me, now, for an example, everyone needs to disclose wherever they are because I'm the friend of a CFO of another institution, for argument's sake. That's a bit difficult, Chair, because I've got no interest in that. I'm not friends with his brother. I'm his friend. So conflict of interest and another individual suffering as a result of this friendship would be extremely harsh. I had no interest. I was promised no gratification. Hence, at this point, I can formally confirm and disagree with the notion that I was conflicted. I was not conflicted on two aspects. I did not interact with physical documents. On general terms, looked and advised on a document that doesn't even relate to the city of Tshwane. Whilst this process was closed a long time ago, which relates to the city of Tshwane, I had no involvement or influence on that. Hence, I'm just trying to touch on the most important point that you raised, Chair, so I can have that on record on why I'm saying I respectfully disagree with that notion. I don't have an interest in his brother's company. Maybe it's unfortunate that I'm his friend, but I don't have an interest at that at all. I don't expect to receive anything from him or his brother.
Second, last question. So according to you, the test for conflict of interest is subjective and based on what you think. I did not. So according to you, the test for conflict of interest is purely subjective based on whatever that it is that you actually did or what you thought or what you believed. The test is subjective.
Chair, according to me, conflict of interest is if you are interested in a particular firm, you've got an association with its directors.
Can you please answer directly? Is it subjective? Is the test for conflict of interest purely subjective? Can you please answer the question directly, Mr. MNISI?
No, Chairperson. Can I explain?
Yes.
My explanation, Chairperson, is that my understanding, the answer is no to your question. A further explanation is that, firstly, conflict of interest is if it's clear from my perspective when I read the documentation that I sign. Do you have an interest in the company or any of its directors? Is there an association of any sort? From my perspective, the answer was no. And it remains no, even at this stage, Chairperson.
Lastly, so basically, and I'm sure the answer is going to be in the affirmative. So from where you are sitting, you saw no need whatsoever to disclose that you had this relationship or interaction with Ngapesheya through Sergeant Kosi. You would not even have seen a need to disclose.
No, Chair.
Thank you.
At that page 228, and I think what I want to raise with you is that it's either you're correct or you're truthful that this was a tender for another institution and not for Tshwane, or in fact, it was for Tshwane. And I want to suggest to you that at 228, where you say we need a grade A guards, that suggests that you're speaking for Tshwane, because at that time you are the CFO of Tshwane. So you are speaking, you're telling Sergeant Nkosi what your employer, what your institution needs. And for me, that is consistent with what you do at page 178, after you are given a list that we find at 177, which has Ngapesheya at item 2, that list where you are to deal with matters in order of priority. And your response to that list, first you say, thanks Mfowethu, I'm on top of this, but more importantly, and this is what I'm raising with you, at 178, right at the top, you say, this is ours, Mfowethu. This is the final list, right? So this is ours, Mfowethu, of a list that contains Ngapesheya. When you read that with 228, where you say we need grade A guards, speaks to a Tshwane tender in which you have an interest, and the interest being that Ngapesheya gets this contract, whether or not you're going to get money or not, your interest is that Ngapesheya gets this tender. So that's the first scenario, and I say to you that's a more probable picture of what was happening here. The second is what you are saying, the second possibility, is, just keep in, you can do notes of what I'm putting to you so that you can respond. The second is, you're correct, the possibility is you're correct, this was for another institution, and you were assisting with completing the Ngapesheya documents so that they are successful in that tender with another institution. But that is still problematic for your position because you are promoting or rooting for the commercial success, financial success of Ngapesheya to succeed in that tender. And that must raise a problem for your position in the BAC as the chairperson, because on the one transaction, you clearly want Ngapesheya to succeed with another institution if we believe and accept that it was for another institution. Well, when you're a chairperson, we must accept that you still have the same interest and bias towards Ngapesheya that it must succeed, even if you get nothing. So on either scenario, it's not helpful to you. In the one, it's an outright case of an illegality, in fact. In the one where you are participating in the corruption of a tender process that is already underway at TSHWANE. The alternative is you're promoting the financial interests of Ngapesheya in another institution, and that should have disqualified you to sit as a BAC chair in TSHWANE 1, or in fact, you should have declared. You may comment if you want to.
Thank you, Commissioner. With your permission, I would really like to comment on that. And commenting, I want to start on the first scenario that you gave. The first scenario that you gave, you mentioned that this is probable that this was for a City of TSHWANE tender, and I'd probably say for TMPD 1. So I'm going to request us to do that same exercise and to test whether grade A guards were necessary for TMPD 1. This will, in some way or form, try and deal with this aspect conclusively now. So you look at the same annexes that I provided on GM 13. On GM 13, I want to refer you to two places. The second bundle of my own submissions. In the message, it was clear that the requirement for that bid was grade A. If you look at page 156 of the second bundle, page 156 of the second bundle, right at the bottom, personnel per region, security personnel, 2 grade B or higher, meaning grade B is sufficient. Further to that, I want to take you to page number, just 1 minute. I'll take you to the evaluation criteria. There we go. For argument's sake, we could refer to page 212 of my bundle still, Commissioner Balloon. On my bundle still, page 212, right at the top, to validate that this was grade B and nothing more. So based on that, I would refer to the Commission to this instance and to state on record that there was no relationship whatsoever. So the first situation is completely not there. The first scenario that you have provided, Commissioner Waloy, is completely not existent because this was a requirement for grade B guards. The document that I was assessing was purely for grade A. So on those grounds, there's no relation whatsoever to that. And we can't, with all due respect, link that to 177 and 178. It's completely not related.
Just ask you a question for clarification. In that page 212,
Yes.
there is a grade B supervisor.
Yes.
And there's a grade C
Yes.
guard.
Yes.
And your certificate here is a grade B, the one that you were discussing with Commissioner Khumalo. So what is the relationship here?
So grade A.
Specifically, I'm asking B and C because
Okay.
you are referring us to 212
Yes.
as evidence to show
Yes.
that, in fact, the requirement of TMPD 1 was not A.
Yes.
What do I see in 212? If
What you
could
see in
just explain.
212 is firstly that you needed grade B or higher. So grade B was the highest that you needed. If you had grade A, it's just a plus. It's not going to score you any additional points. Grade C was the lower level guards. So in terms of hierarchy, there's grade A, B, and C guards. A is presumably the highest level, from my understanding. For this tender TMPD1, they needed only grade B and grade C. And Ngapeshia, by virtue of having grade B as their director, they had grade C in terms of all other guards. So now I'm going to move over to the second scenario that you're bringing on board. And I will agree with you. I'm here to the Commission to present a true circumstance of what occurred. And this is what happened. This was for another institution, purely for another institution, where they had asked me for general advice, taking into account that I am a CFO and I specialize with issues of this nature. General advice did not interact physically with documents. That particular tender was still open. I gave that advice subsequent to having a look at the critical documents that were there. Chair, I did not actively want them to succeed. I just played my role to give general advice. With the evidence that we have in front of us in the communications, I did not actively want them to succeed. I was not interested in that. I was just interested in my role of giving advice as requested by a friend. I did not actively want them to win in this tender whatsoever. That was up to them in terms of what document they put in place which leads them to be successful.
And what did you know about General Dlamini's involvement with this tender on the second scenario? I mean,
So-
why are you redirecting them to General Dlamini? This has nothing to do with TSHWANE.
Yes. So at this point I knew that General Dlamini and Sergeant Nkosi were very close. So I didn't want to take this matter any further. And I said, if you want any further advice, please speak to US. He also knows a lot about issues of this nature.
No. That's not what your message says. Your message says he must speak to, Dlamini must tell him to make a correction. So
Yes.
you knew that Dlamini is intimately involved. Otherwise, you would not have referenced Dlamini. You would have simply said to Nkosi, if this was a matter between you and Nkosi, you would have said to Nkosi, tell Begi to make that correction. You say, Dlamini must tell him to make the correction. So you know that General Dlamini is involved with whatever's going on.
Commissioner, I knew that they were close, hence I
No.
referred him to him.
Okay, all right, that's your answer.
Can I just clarify my understanding of how you explain these texts? That first one, Ngapeshia is grade B and has nothing in the documents. You said that you hadn't seen Ngapeshia's documents, that you knew that they were grade B only, and that this raw tender document for this third-party municipality or government required grade A. Is that what your version is?
I knew that from seeing the raw tender document.
From seeing the tender document,
Yes.
the invitation to tender, yes.
Exactly.
So that third-party municipality or organ of state was asking for grade A guards, and you knew, because you could see the document.
Yes.
And you knew that Ngapeshia had no grade A guards.
Yes.
But your next message says, Mfowethu, please send to US and request him to provide him with information for the correction.
Yes.
If Ngapeshia has no grade A guards, how could they ever correct this problem?
Meaning they will need to apply for that. That tender process was still open. They need to get advice on how the application process works to get an upgrade
Sorry, get an upgrade
to grade A.
to grade A.
Yeah.
So the advice that they were going to get from General Dlamini was how you can get an upgrade to grade A.
From my perspective, they had grade B. They were never going to be compliant for that. I had to refer them to someone who had more knowledge of CERA and the security industry, which was the general at this instance. Hence, he would be in the position to give them further advice on what to do to get this issue corrected. There was nothing further I could do about that.
So you thought that General Dlamini could advise them on how to go about upgrading their CERA status from B to A?
Precisely.
I see. Do you have any sense of how long that takes?
I don't know. I'm not aware. I don't know how that works.
And how long was this third-party tender bid open for?
Oh, with all due respect, yes, I don't recall.
You then say we need grade A guards. Who's we?
So we is this unfortunate way of how we refer to each other, and it's repetitive in these discussions. Even when it's something that involves him, we say ours. We've seen that on many occasions. I said we in this instance as well. It was a way that we used to speak. It was an informal discussion. There was nothing formal about this matter. I knew exactly. I knew he would be able to understand this. This was just our way of speaking.
So the we is an informal way that you refer to yourself, Sergeant Nkosi, and General Dlamini?
No. Sometimes I say we, you must do that. Sometimes he'd say ours, even though it's my responsibility or it's a matter that rests with me. So we use such terms interchangeably because I think at this point we had become good friends.
Brother for life. In
Yes.
you, I have found brother for life.
At this point, we were friends, Commissioner.
Brother for life.
Commissioner, we were friends.
I didn't understand you to take issue with that. In you, I found a brother for life.
Chair, I'm not taking issue. I'm responding and I'm saying we were friends.
This is more than friends. This is brothers for life.
And I did engage in my sworn affidavit that he had in fact become like a brother to me. He was there for me in an extremely difficult period of my life.
Yeah.
And the support he had provided me, Chair, no one would have provided me such.
So he
So
was
at
like-
that point, he was really a brother to me.
He was like family.
He showed me,
Like, not family. He was like family.
he was like family, Commissioner. He wasn't family though. He was just a good friend of mine, so I'm not related to him.
Chairperson, I'm sorry to interrupt. I've asked my learned friend that in fact, I wanted to have it at 3 o'clock, just for a very brief adjournment, because it became clear to me that we are not going to finish today. And I indicated to him I need to make arrangements, of course, because I've got other briefs for tomorrow. I've been trying to deal with it through messaging, and I couldn't deal with it. So I'm extremely sorry to ask at this point if we can have a very short adjournment so I can try and make telephone calls. Officers, unfortunately, work on normal landlines and don't work on WhatsApp. So if you appreciate.
It should not be more than 10 minutes, please.
No, it will definitely not be that long.
So I won't indicate a time. You'll indicate
No.
when we
It's
may,
most probably going to be shorter.
when to
than that.
come back. All right, let's adjourn.
If you have a Chairperson, I'm indebted for the short adjournment.
You are most welcome, Ms. Vanengeva. Yes, Mr. Shaskalson?
Thanks, Chair. So your version is that these documents that, well, this advice that you were giving to Sergeant Nkosi related to a completely different contract or tender with a different municipality. And you didn't see any conflict of interest in advising Sergeant Nkosi and Ngapesheya in relation to a different bid at the same time as you were presiding over their bid to the city of Tshwane?
I wasn't presiding over the city of Tshwane bid. At this stage, it was not even an evaluation. It was not even an adjudication. At adjudication, Chair, it was 9 months down the line in about September, as previously indicated.
You were chair of the BAC that was going to make the award of this tender that was already in the tender process.
I agree with that.
And you saw no conflict there?
As previously indicated, there was no conflict. Chair, my answer, permission to explain as again, in reference to the general scope of work that I was going to provide advice and guidance on, firstly. Secondly, in reference to referring them to other individuals who would be able to assist them. I did not interact with any documentation. The bid was also open at that stage. So I didn't see any conflict of interest by virtue of me not having any interest in the company as well.
I want to round off on this topic, but I want to round off by actually putting to you all of the common cause facts in relation to this contract, and then putting to you some inferences from that at the end of the common cause facts. So I'm just going to put common cause facts to you now. Don't want any comments. I just want you to accept whether these facts are common cause or not. We can then get into what inferences to draw from them at a later stage. So the first fact is that 57 bidders bid for this contract, TMPD1. Is that accepted?
Yes. I confirm, Chair.
Then the second fact is that on 11 March 2025, Sergeant Nkosi sent you the names of 2 of those bidders, El Shaddai and Ngapesheya.
Confirm.
You knew at the time that his message had been forwarded from General Dlamini.
On the 11th of March, I didn't know because there was no common factors that we have, like your captain, etc. This was...
Sorry, if I can take you back to that 3rd of March message. You'll recall that 3 messages were forwarded simultaneously to you by Sergeant Nkosi, all with the same timestamp.
So it's on 148.
Page 148. So the first one, they all have the same timestamp, 121:43, 121:43, 121:43. And the last one has the language of General Dlamini in it.
Yes.
Did you? I thought we'd established at the time that you realized that they all 3 came from General Dlamini because they all had the identical timestamp. But if not, then by all means say so. I'm interested in the first one, not in the second and the third.
Okay.
Did you realize at the time that that first one, the 2 vehicles for land on Ngapesheya Security Services, El Shaddai Security Services, that one came from General Dlamini through Sergeant Nkosi?
Yes, Chair. with the request to check for compliance.
Then the next fact is that those two bidders, Ngapashe and El Shaddai, are subsequently two of the 7 bidders who win the tender more than 6 months later, pursuant to a decision taken by the meeting of the BAC on 25 September 2025 that you chair. So well, let's take it step by step. Those two, Ngapashe and El Shaddai, are 2 of 7 bidders who ultimately get awarded a contract through this tender process. You accept that?
I accept that. Permission to just explain. After a thorough process had been followed, with the verification of external property teams.
That award takes place pursuant to a decision of the BAC on 25 September at a meeting that you chair.
I confirm that.
You can, I'm going to give you all the time in the world to comment later. I just want to establish which of the facts are common cause.
I confirm that, Chair, but okay.
You now realize, even though you didn't at the time, that Sergeant Nkosi was asking you to rig the tender in favor of those 2 bidders. Do you accept that?
Chair, I'm not going to say yes or no. I qualified this with all due respect. Firstly, by virtue of persistent, I made up my own inference. There's no conclusive evidence for me to accept that. But due to the persistent nature of the request and how they came about, I, in my mind, saw it at that. But I can't conclusively say with objective evidence that I was asked to rig a tender. The request that was sent to me was to check for compliance.
Certainly at the time of the first message, your evidence is that you thought Sergeant Nkosi was just asking you to check for compliance.
Yes.
You knew at all times that you could not check for compliance because the document should be under lock and key at BEC and you should have no sight of those documents until they serve before you at the BAC.
I knew that and I couldn't assist, and I can also confirm I had no sight of those documents at any point whatsoever.
You didn't send any written message to Sergeant Nkosi telling him that you could not check for compliance because that would be an improper interference with the BEC, but you say you told him this in a call after that, well, at the time of that first message.
Yes, SC.
Although General Dlamini should have known that any inquiry on your part in relation to Ngapashe or El Shaddai would be an improper interference with the BEC, you took no action in relation to what appeared to be his request that you check for compliance in relation to those 2 companies.
I took no action because at this point in time there was no action to be taken.
Despite the fact that you allegedly made clear to Sergeant Nkosi on 11 March that you could not do anything to check the compliance of Ngapashe and El Shaddai, 1 week later, on the 18th of March, he sent you another message with those 2 names, and you understood him to be asking again for you to check for their compliance.
The persistence was continuing, Chair, and it was at this point where I mentioned to the Commission that I really started to suspect that this is him playing me for a fool in terms of saying, please assist in terms of ensuring that this is awarded. Hence, I also played along, and I used the method better known as huffing and puffing, but I did not assist in any way or form.
And as part of your huffing and puffing, you responded to that message saying, thanks, my bro.
Yes.
And you chose to do that instead of sending him a message in writing saying that what he was asking you to do was impossible and improper.
Yes, SC. And the reason for that, as stated earlier on, I had no conclusive evidence that he was asking me to do something that's improper. What I had was him asking me to check for compliance. I was not willing to start any conflict by virtue of me not having any conclusive evidence. He would have just told me straight, but I didn't ask you to do that. Why are you even saying that? So I chose to deal with this matter in a delicate matter and wait for him to be clear on what his thoughts and what he wants me to do. I took it on the basis that we had a discussion, it was a check for compliance. I see.
You did not consider a request to check for compliance when a bid has closed. You didn't consider that to be improper, that request.
No, it was improper. Hence, I told him from the beginning that it's improper. And I did make that clear to him.
Also on 21 March, the Deputy Mayor told you that Action SA and EFF had asked him to interfere with the tender by putting forward 5 companies. Is that correct?
That's correct. But also just to qualify, it was a statement of warning that be careful, there are people purporting to try and influence the process. We need to safeguard this by all means possible.
But the fact was that he had told you that the EFF and Action SA had asked him to put forward 5 companies for this tender.
My understanding at the time was that, hence I have agreed. I just requested your permission to explain, and I think I've provided that explanation on the context behind. Be careful, we need to safeguard the process accordingly. We cannot allow this to jeopardize the city's tender processes. That was the discussion with the Deputy Executive Mayor.
You forwarded the message from the Deputy Mayor to Sergeant Nkosi.
Yes. To explain further, the reason for forwarding him this message was also to plant the discussion that I had with him on 148. This is sent on 152, well after he had started inquiring about these issues. The purpose of that was to try and cement the point, there's nothing I can do to assist you with this. This is a process that is against the law.
You at no stage raised the threat of interference from Action SA and EFF with the compliance people.
The answer to that is yes. Can I request permission to explain further? Chairperson, in this country, we need to be extremely certain when you raise any threat of interference by any parties. You need to ensure that you have conclusive evidence to justify your case. We've seen what happens to whistleblowers. We've seen that people die in this country for raising matters with concrete evidence. In this case, in point, I had no concrete evidence. The only discussions that were there were individuals asking me to do something that they thought was lawful, which was of course unlawful, and I was clear on how I dealt with that. It would have been extremely reckless and irresponsible for me to do that without the appropriate evidence to back up my claim, not only for myself, Chair, but for my family.
But you're sharing it with somebody else as a fact. You forward this to say, and you said to us earlier that you said, see what others are doing. So you have formed a view that this is a fact. Action SA and EFF have said to Mr. Mudise that he must submit only 5, and they also want to interfere. You've given us all of that explanation. So you have formed a view as you share it with Sergeant Nkosi. It's not as if you are in doubt about it. Certainly from your explanation, you didn't express any doubt about the veracity of what is contained here, and what is being discussed with you is you do nothing about it. In fact, you do something, you share it with an outsider. Within the city, you do nothing about it.
Chair, context of that message, firstly, I don't have and I didn't have any conclusive evidence. Secondly, sharing it with the outsider who was purporting to asking me to do the same thing. It would be helpful for me to desist the persistence from continuing further. That was the context of sharing that in order to try and make the matter solid within Sergeant Nkosi's mind on why I say I cannot assist on this matter.
I hear your answer, but I must say it doesn't make sense.
Sorry, Commissioner, we didn't hear what you said.
So I say I hear his answer, but it doesn't make sense, his answer.
Do you want to comment on that, Mr. MNISI?
With all due respect, yes, I do. These were the sequence of events. For me to raise any threat, I need to justify to my superior with concrete evidence on why I'm saying this is there, Chairperson. Without having that, the city manager would be saying, put systems in place to safeguard the process. Because I wouldn't be in a position to even justify to him what I'm saying. He would say, we are seeing these messages, we are seeing this communication, show me verbatim where you are seeing unlawful instruction. Hence, I'm saying, Chair, without that being on board, there's no way that I could have taken a risk of that nature without being safeguarded. We've seen what had happened. We had a point in time when my security personnel was withdrawn for no reason whatsoever. So I need to be sure when I raise issues of this nature, and I need to be able to back that up with concrete evidence.
Let's continue with the sequence. We've now got to 25 March. And you've now told Sergeant Nkosi twice that you cannot do anything to check the compliance of Ngapesheya or El Shaddai. You've never done that in writing, but you say you've done it twice in calls. He now asks you, now sends you a message for the third time with the two names, Ngapesheya and El Shaddai. And you understood him again to be asking to check for their compliance.
I understood him to be checking.
Again, for the third time, to be asking you to check compliance on those companies.
Is this on page 177?
No, it's not 177, it is 157.
So on 157, Chair, like I'm saying, that's what I suspected and I ignore him. Because at this point in time, due to the persistence, I had already made up my mind, thought about this, that this is more than just checking compliance. In my mind, I already formulated that and it was known to me.
You were supposed you just spent 45 minutes with Sergeant Nkosi.
Roughly 45 minutes, yes, I see.
After your 45 minutes with Sergeant Nkosi, but still on the same day, Sergeant Nkosi forwarded you another message from General Dlamini with a list of 7 companies, saying that these were the 7 companies that Victor Khopa, the chair of the BAC, said were his mandate. And the mandate was alleged to have come from someone called Nico. You're nodding your head, so you accept all of that?
I accept all of that.
And you didn't know who Nico was, but Sergeant Nkosi has now explained that it was Nico Matobela.
Yes, Chair, I didn't know who Nico was and I still don't know who Nico Matobela is.
Nico Matobela was certainly not any person who had any legitimate role to play in the procurement process relating to TMPD1.
I don't know Nico Matobela. I'm not aware of him being an employee at the city of TSHWANE. So as far as I'm concerned, he might be an outsider, I don't know.
But the fact that the BEC chair had apparently been given a mandate from an outsider to appoint 7 companies was not an issue that you saw fit to raise with anybody.
You see, Chair, firstly, the BEC chair needs to come on board and raise this issue with me. Thirdly, any of these companies that were there, in any case, were disqualified for various reasons, as we have seen. So at this point in time, I was not even interested in this. My pure interest was to safeguard the process, 1. 2, get an alert that could serve as concrete evidence for me in order to enable any potential escalations.
You didn't see fit to raise the allegation that someone had given a mandate to the chair of the BEC with the chair of the BEC himself?
Chair, I can't raise it with him. I would now be actively interfering in the BEC process. This is a BEC that's independent, and they need to ensure that they don't discuss anything of the BEC, the work that they do outside the committee itself. I, as the CFO, I'm not allowed to ask for progress, status quo, of any nature whilst that process is ongoing. By law, I can't interfere. That would be interfering. So I would wait for the BEC chair to raise this as an alarm and say, I've got a problem now. This is what's going on. As part and parcel of that, I could effectively use that submission as part of my evidence of escalating it further. In the absence of that, I just need to ensure that we safeguard the process, be alert of any concrete evidence that I need to obtain, which will enable me to escalate the matters further. At this point in time, there was nothing that was there.
You certainly didn't raise it with the probity investigators when they were later charged with investigating the probity of this tender.
I was comfortable of the probity exercise, taking into account I know the stringent process that they undertake, the stringent process of document analysis, the various systems that they use, not only in terms of validating handwritings and signatures, they've got intense processes that they utilize. I was supportive of that process, and I felt I could place full reliance on that. Secondly, on the basis that this is an external firm who's got absolutely no interest and wants to ensure that the process is seamless. I placed significant reliance on that process. It is an external party. It's a third-party confirmation, which is superior and authoritative in nature.
But we know from you that probity sometimes gets it wrong. We know about the truck issue. We know about the financial statements issue.
Yes, we do. We've seen that.
So you couldn't be confident that everything they did would be 100%.
Chair, if we were to operate in that manner, we'll never trust anything, because at this point in time, almost every external certification step is based on human intervention and human analysis. The point is, are those matters picked up at a certain point in time? Are the internal controls strong enough to have a debate or a discussion on those matters? I mean, we've had instances where sometimes auditors get issues wrong, and those are third parties as well. So internal controls are key to identify any mishaps, even from third-party confirmation perspective, taking into account that these are also human beings. But by virtue of these guys being external independent individuals, it carries significant weight because it lessens the burden in terms of worrying of any particular interest. But further, I am happy that internal controls are strong and they are able to pick up any deficiencies within that process as well.
Straight after the message about the alleged mandate of Victor Gorpa was sent to you, you receive another message, also forwarded by General Dlamini through Sergeant Nkosi, which lists 7 companies which are described as, well, the message reads, Captain, find below our vehicles for land to be given Kumfowethu in order of priority. You confirm you received that?
I confirm I received that. Also permission to just explain on that.
Well, can I just, you'll have a permission, you'll get an opportunity to comment. As I understood your evidence, you decided to huff and puff at this point because you suspected they were asking you to interfere improperly. Is that correct?
Correct. At this point, I knew that it was more than just compliance, even though from their perspective, it was still compliance in inverted commas. I had to huff and puff because I was aware.
And so you responded by sending 2 texts. The first is, thanks Mfowethu, I'm on top of this. And the second is, this is ours Mfowethu, this is the final list, right?
Correct. I sent those messages by way of huffing and puffing.
And your huffing and puffing seems to have succeeded because the response of Sergeant Nkosi was, yes, it's our final list.
Also, just to, yes, my answer and permission to just expand SC is that from there moving forward, no further inferences were made in terms of me assisting in compliant checks in reference to this bid. Hence, my huffing and puffing helped me deal with this persistence that I had been facing.
Agreed with his final list, there's nothing further to do. You're on the same page as far as what his final list is. He doesn't need to come back because you said it's a final list, he confirms. So as far as you are concerned, everything is in order. Why does he need to come back? Because final list is agreed.
That's the point of huffing and puffing, Chair. That's the exact point of huffing and puffing.
So I don't understand how it supports what you are trying to say, because if he says this is our final list, right? Or you are saying that and he says, yes, that's the final list. It means the final list of 7 is set. There's no further debate. There's no need for further requests because there is the list. He's happy with it. You are happy with it. That's the end of it.
Yes, spot on, Chair. But your understanding, I just need to qualify on that and on my reason for saying why I had to entertain him. This issue was going to persist right through to the end. I had really seen that this was a situation wherein it was more than just compliance under the pretext of just compliance, even though I don't have conclusive evidence to say that at this point. But why should I continue entertaining that and have this matter haunting me indefinitely? I played the same game that they were playing. They were huffing at me in terms of just checking compliance. I did the exact same thing. It helped me, because I needed no longer to deal with any of these issues moving forward.
I think you're missing my point, Mr. MNISI. I'm saying to you, there was no need for him to send you further lists or to require you to do anything further because you say to him, this is ours, Mfethu, this is the final list, right? And then he confirms. So the issue is finalized.
Chair, the issue is not finalized. That's exactly what I wanted to achieve. I needed to get him off my back. If he thinks it's finalized, that's his thought process on its own. On my perspective, I know exactly what I meant.
And the same 7 companies on his final list, those are the companies that were awarded?
No, not all of these companies are awarded. From my looking at this list, 3 of them are awarded out of the 7.
4 out of 7.
Oh, okay, at 4. But not all of them were awarded.
Thank you.
When you ask in that page where you ask, this is ours, Mfowethu, ours as against whose?
We addressed this at first.
Yeah, no,
This-
you can address it again. This is ours, Mfowethu, as against whose?
Yes. So the purpose of this is ours, meaning this is the final list. I put a question mark. It was the informal nature of our discussions. What I meant with this was, this is the final list. This is our final list. This is the final list. The
Yeah.
context of how the informal nature has been termed, might not make sense now, but that's what I meant by that.
No, you're asking 2 different questions. However you read this, in whatever context, whatever formulation and repositioning of what's written there, it's 2 different questions. The first question is, this is ours, Mfowethu. And a second different question is, this is the final list, right? So I'm asking you about the first one. When you say this is ours, Mfowethu, my question is, as against whose list? Because we are talking about a list, and you
Yes.
confirming with him that this is yours.
Yes.
As against whose list?
Commissioner, I wasn't comparing with any list that have been received. I was merely stating the fact that this is the final list by way of huffing and puffing, so this matter could stop from my end. That's what I meant when I sent this message.
So we should not read, we should consider the first question as not written, because the 2 do not coalesce into one question. In any construction, they don't. There are 2 different questions. Your response suggests or means to me that then I must consider the first question as not written, because with both questions you were conveying, according to you, that this is the final list. That's what you were asking him, this is the final list, right?
Yes, but permission to expand, Commissioner. The context of that could have easily stopped at this is ours, Mfethu. And I know in instances when I deal with informal matters, I respond extremely quickly. I could have easily deleted that. I don't know why I didn't make those necessary corrections. But what I meant when I was sending this is what I've just explained. that this is the final list.
That the text conveys two different questions, the text.
Yes, I agree
You,
to
you
that,
accept
Commissioner.
that?
Yes.
Okay. And so I shouldn't not read one. I should try and find a way to reconcile them. I must not disregard any one of them because it's two different questions.
That's my request, Commissioner. I don't want to say to you, just completely disregard the first one because it's there, unfortunately.
And you say we must disregard the first question. This is ours in 482 and rather go with the question that asks, this is the final list, right?
That's what I meant.
Okay, thank you.
Now, while this process is still before the BEC, you are advising.
Based on the submission and the scrutiny of those documents, I can say with surety, it's not based on what I'm sharing, I'm certain it was not anything in relation to the city of Tshwane, but I can confirm that I did provide general advice on what the requirements are.
And in the context of that process, you send a message that says we need grade A guards. So if it's not a tender for the city of Tshwane, then by referring to we, you're referring to Ngapa Shire as part of we.
So firstly, this is not part of the city of Tshwane. I had tried to clarify on that inference where there was two scenarios that was raised by Commissioner Baloyi. This is grade A that was needed. There's nothing in TMPD 1 which required grade A. I had respectively thought we had dealt with that matter. And my only concern now is that, yes, I did advise after seeing a document from another institution on the key terms of reference. But I again refer you to that. But further, the score sheets that are there are score sheets that I was provided to SC in terms of bundle 4. We could see where those score sheets engage. I'm just adding further to that inference if we still think I might have interfered. But it does not.
Sorry, Mr. MNISI, I think we're at cross purposes. I'm just putting to you the common cause facts. I'm not
Okay.
going back to debate whether this was for a Tshwane tender or another tender. You say that this was for a third-party municipality or organ of state tender.
Yes.
And in that context, you send a text saying we need grade A guards.
Yes.
We.
Yes.
Which suggests that we refers to yourself and Ngapa Share.
This is how we used to speak. It referred to me and Sergeant Nkosi, not me and Ngapesheya. This is also one of the key questions that I received, that in some instances we interchangeably used those like we, ours, to a point where Commissioner Kumalo even said brothers for life. That's what I was trying to explain when I was saying that. We did not mean City of Tshwane. We did not mean me, Ngapesheya, meant me, Sergeant Nkosi. That's how we used to normally speak, but that's what I meant when I said we need that.
So you and Sergeant Nkosi needed grade A guards for the Ngapa Share tender?
No, not me. That's what he needed. In a normal inference, we would refer to each other interchangeably as we and ours. There are many other inferences within the chat where you see that, where it's something that purely deals with me alone, but he would say ours. Where it's a matter where it deals with him alone, I would say we should be worried, for argument's sake, where it's got nothing to do with me completely. So I'm just trying to bring that inference to when I said we, it does not necessarily me and Sergeant Nkosi, it means you. But that's how we spoke due to the nature of the relationship and how it had developed over time.
Well, let me take you to another instance where you use we quite clearly to refer to Ngapa Share, yourself and Sergeant Nkosi in relation to a tender at the city of Tshwane. Can you go to page 99? You have it?
I've got page 99.
And there you'll see that on the 7th of January at message time 8:55:35, which is 10:55 in real time, you send a screenshot to Sergeant Nkosi advertising a tender for the supply, delivery and offloading of refuse bags for the city of Tshwane for a period of 3 years as and when required. And the message underneath says, Mfowethu, I've sent the above to Becky, in other words, to his brother. We need to regroup on it. What is we regrouping on a tender about?
So firstly, let me clarify a few things. This was a tender that was advertised on the 12th of December. Sent it to him on the 7th of January. There's nothing sensitive about that. There's nothing confidential, something in the public domain. I think that's the first clarification I want to bring on board. Second, it hadn't closed, it was still open. Regrouping was me giving them advice in terms of what the key administrative requirements are, mandatory requirements, as well as key evaluation criteria. This seemed like something easy, and if you get that right, the competition would now be purely based on pricing. As I've stated earlier on, it is allowed by law. This is a matter that was even escalated by the city service delivery war room. So the regrouping, that meant giving advice on an open tender within the city in reference to administrative, mandatory, as well as evaluation criteria in a general context. The we, again, it's just the way we used to speak. And I'm happy you're raising this because it is one of the items where it does validate that. We does not mean me, him, and Ngapeshe. I've got no interest in that. It was just a way of speaking.
Sorry, can you just clarify what is allowed by law? You selecting one potential supplier and advising them on how they should comply with the requirements, and then you later on evaluating the same tender. You say that is allowed by law?
No, I'm saying what's allowed is to explain where clarification matters.
No, but here you are selecting one service provider, potential, and you are saying, give this to your brother, presumably so that he can submit a bid, and you must regroup to advise him on how he must complete, so that the only thing remaining is the price. And then you are going to later on evaluate the same tender.
I will not evaluate, I would adjudicate.
Adjudicate?
Yes.
Yes. So you say that's what is allowed by law?
Chair, that the context of this was me to provide general clarification. And I could provide general clarification on anyone who asked me that. He had asked me in previous instances on this matter. It started with the matter in terms of the vendor number. During those discussions, he had asked me.
So you do it with all the bidders, or you choose one and you only give advice to that one?
Bidders are at liberty to ask me, and it does happen, where they send formal clarification emails, and we provide that as well. We would discuss them physically if they still maintain that they can't understand them, as long as the bid is still open, and as long as you don't interact with any documentation. And also, maybe for the House to know, they were unsuccessful because they didn't meet any of those mandatory requirements. So even if I did do that, it didn't assist because they didn't comply with the ambit of the law, and they were not awarded on this bid. But the principle and the prescripts behind that, it is allowed, Chair. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as there's no physical interference in interaction with documentation from those bidders.
The print here is very fine, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I understand you to be saying this was a bid or a tender that was open.
Yes.
You were bringing it to Beggy's attention. When you say in your message, I've sent the above to Beggy,
Yes.
you were alerting him.
No. So in previous discussions, that he had told me that he had seen this, Sergeant Kosi. So I was confirming if this is the one, then I'm sending it to him. He had raised this to me. It was in the public domain since the 12th of December. This was the 7th of January in this time. So they were already aware of it.
Why were you sending this to Beggy if this tender is in the public domain? And my focus is not whether it was or not on the public domain. So let's not make that the conversation. But now that you have said that, if this tender is in the public domain, so presumably Beggy is aware of it, presumably, why are you sending it to him if you are not alerting him to, hey, friend, there is a tender like this?
No, I was confirming that this is the one. I was not actively alerting him. We had a discussion previously, and this was my way of me confirming. Some individuals...
Finish?
Yes, Chair, that was a confirmation.
So you were confirming to him what? I'm not understanding your explanation.
Okay. So I was confirming if this is the one that they alerted me to, firstly. Secondly, I'm available to discuss any key administrative, mandatory, and evaluation criteria if you don't understand that. So if needs be, let's meet to regroup. I can be able to explain that to you.
Your message says, I have sent the above to Beggy.
I agree,
You don't
Commissioner.
say, I am confirming whether this is the one.
Yes.
Your message, and again, maybe you will say it's because this is on text and you write informally, but your message as it stands now, it is you have sent this to Becky. That's all it is. And then the next thing you say is different. You say we need to regroup on it. And your explanation is it was to advise him about how to complete it. And I'm summarizing how to complete it minus price. So that price is the only issue. So you're conveying two different things. You sent it to him, come, let's meet so I can help you complete. That doesn't square up, for me at least, with you were asking for confirmation from him whether this is the tender that he was talking about. Because the regrouping, you must be planning to regroup about something that you are certain about. You're certain it is this tender that you are sending to him. There is certainty about it. That's why the invitation to regroup.
Okay. Commissioner, firstly, the intention around that, it was a reminder. We had a discussion about this previously. Me was just confirming, is this what you were talking about earlier on? Secondly, I did not help complete. I just want to get that clear. I'm not allowed to help complete documentation. I'm not allowed to interact with submissions by law, but I am allowed to explain critical evaluation criteria, mandatory documentation, and mandatory requirements if needs be. That was the context of this message.
What does that mean? I mean, the tender document does tell, and that provide explanation. It tells all bidders what information they should be providing in the document, right? And what should accompany that document. And that's what everybody gets evaluated on. So when you say you were going to be advising them about evaluation criteria, and by the way, this is not the first time that Ngapesha, if we look at the sequence of messages, it's not the first time that Ngapesha is submitting a bid. And so I'm not sure that, it's not clear to me that they would have required your advice about what is the evaluation criteria, among other things.
Yes.
So can you just then explain what were you going to be advising Becky and Sergeant Nkosi about relating to this tender?
Yes. Commissioner, like I said, it was purely to advise if needs be, in terms of administrative, mandatory, and evaluation criteria. Nothing else and nothing more. They had submitted many bids. They were unsuccessful. Equally with this bid. They were unsuccessful because they did not comply with whatever requirements that were raised. So bidders don't understand compliance document. We just looked at item C and D, which said we want companies, rates and taxes, but then D says also individuals. So most people misinterpret that and only consider one. That's why, Commissioner, I even attached annexure GM 2 and 3, because this matter was so persistent. It was even escalated to the echelons of the city service delivery wall.
No, I do understand that. I don't think you need to repeat that over and over and spend time on that, as much time as you're spending on it. We are speaking about a very specific bid. This is not general, the general issues that you advise bidders on. There's a specific tender. You alert a potential party to it, and then you say, we need to regroup on it. So you are actually he's not asked you, he's not said to you, and that's not being your evidence. You're not saying, he said to you, I don't know how to complete it, or I want advice from you. You initiate on your story, or on your account, you sent it to him to confirm if this was the bid he was talking about. And then, in addition to that, you say, we need to regroup on it. So here you are, chairperson of the BAC, inviting a very specific party who wants to bid, who you're suggesting they should bid. In fact, I want to say that to me, this looks like you were alerting him to a tender and you wanted him to submit, and you needed to get together so that you can discuss what you're discussing about completing that tender. And you are chairperson of the BAC that is going to be adjudicating that very bid, and you see nothing wrong with that. Even in hindsight, you don't see anything wrong with it if you didn't see it at the time.
Chair, firstly, I did not actively alert. I am giving context. I think some of these matters, unfortunately, there is an element of restriction to what we have in front of us. But the context behind this was not me actively alerting. It was a confirmation taken into account from a previous discussion that we had. How I'm validating that is that this was already in the public domain. I know you say it's not relevant, Chair, but with due permission, it forms a critical component, part of my explanation, and that they had seen that. It was just a confirmation. Secondly, regroup if needs be. If you need clarification, I'm available. If you need clarification on these matters, only restricted to this, I'm available for that. And ultimately, Chair, they were not compliant. They were not awarded on this bid in any case because they failed to meet the minimum requirements, which means the matter is falling dead on this aspect, and I did not interfere and I could not interfere, regardless of whether I sat at BAC.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I want to say is your text doesn't say we regroup if need be, which is completely different from what is written here. What is written here is we need to regroup on it. It's quite positive. It's not open-ended as to it's up to Begi and Sergeant Gosi. You actually say we do need to get together about it. That's my last comment on it.
Chair, before we move on,
Yes.
it's just unfortunate that messages are informal, and that's what I meant at this point. So I want to give that as my advice, as my testimony to the Commission in terms of clarifying the content of that discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sosa.
Chair, we've gone long past 4 o'clock.
Let's go until past, perhaps.
I'm sorry, Chair. I should just.
Or should we stop here?
Can I ask if we can adjourn at this point? I did assure my learned friend that we'd never run much beyond 4 o'clock.
I saw Ms. Van
Yeah,
den
Chairperson,
Heeff
I don't want to discuss it in public, but it's very difficult to go past 4. Thank you.
Let's adjourn and resume at 9:30 tomorrow.